Hey, coaches, welcome to Championship Culture. Got a fantastic guest tonight, an old buddy of mine. Bill Wyrick is a 25-year high school coaching veteran. He's a 16-year college coaching veteran, 7 years as a high school head coach, and 30-plus years as a D coordinator. And I'm going to let Bill do his 1-minute introduction, but I can tell you this. Me and Bill played multiple times. Bill's teams always had great schemes. They were always super prepared. They were always ready to go. Like you knew you were going to be in from when you better buckle it up when you played one of his teams. Extremely physical, and you know, as I'm getting older, this wouldn't have meant anything to me 10 years ago. But your team always were great sportsmen. Always had great sportsmanship, and I think as both of us get older, those five things are more and more important. So, buddy, I appreciate you being here. And can we start with your 1-minute elevator introduction?
Yeah, man, exactly. I mean, hey, you've said a lot of it. I grew up in Ohio, a town called Lancaster. Um, was a very average high school football wide receiver and went to Mount Union College, down at the University of Mount Union. And I'm old enough, and I was a terrible college wide receiver, but I'm old enough to tell you that I have played on the last losing team that they had at Mount Union. We were 4-5 in 1977 when I was a sophomore. And then they got rid of guys like me and got some players and started winning a bunch of games. And right now, 13 national championships in D3. Played 2 years at Mount, was a GA or was a student coach my last 2 years. Really kind of wasn't sure. I actually dropped out of school for almost a year and worked in a factory and decided that, college is a good thing. And I think I want to be a coach. And I went back and was a student coach for 2 years, was lucky enough to be a grad assistant at Eastern Kentucky for 3 years. And we played for 2 national championships and were blessed to win one of them. And then I went from there to Marietta College in Ohio. And when I went there, we had the longest losing streak in the nation. We'd lost 40-some games in a row. And the second game we played, we went to Ohio Northern University and tied something like 3-3 or 10-10. And we drive back home. We get there about 10 o'clock at night, and the students are there, fans there, and they're tearing the goalpost down. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, we ain't going to win nothing here. They're excited about tying a team we should have beat by 3 scores. But I spent 6 years there, had a good experience, spent a year in Middlesport, Ohio with my buddy, helping him out, and then went to West Point in an admin role. Ed Warner at the time, Ed's down at Florida International, one of the Florida schools, I forget which one. He's an offensive line guy. Ed was a Mount Union guy. He was a freshman when I was a senior, so he gave me that opportunity. I called him to ask him to recommend me for a job somewhere else, and he called and gave me a recommendation to go there, and I ended up going there and spent 3 years there in mostly an admin role. But they did have an interesting thing. They called it at the time lightweight football. Now they call it sprint football. The kids had a weight limit, and they had to weigh, at that time, they had to be 159 pounds on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock, and then they could play however heavy they could get on by Friday night. And it was fast. These kids could run. I was an offensive line coach. I had offensive linemen. 3 of them had played skill positions in high school, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And then wanted to get back on the field. So I went to Shippensburg University for 2 years as a D-line coach. And then, as happens in college football, they were pressing the head coach. So it was last in, first out. So I thought I was going to go to Vanderbilt in an admin role. A guy named Perry Fuel, who's been in the NFL and he's working in the NFL office now. He's a North Carolina native. Perry and I got to know each other when he was at West Point, and he was trying to get me on the staff at Vanderbilt in a really kind of like probably a football ops guy is what you'd call it today. And they'd offered me the job and all that. And then the AD, who's the new AD, wouldn't fund the position. So I'm in the middle of June without a job. And it came down to I had 2 choices. I go into St. Lawrence University and froze my butt off. It's in Canton, New York. And if you look on a map, it's about 15 minutes from Montreal. And I'd already been cold, and I didn't want to be cold no more. And I wanted to try to get in North Carolina for years and couldn't get anybody to hire me in a college situation. So ended up coming down into Western Harnett High School in Harnett County and working there for 12 years, and then went to Harnett Central for 5 and finished up my last 7 at Terry Sanford in Fayetteville. And I've been out for 4 years now.
I forgot that you went to Mount Union, and I honestly I forgot that you spent that much time at the college level. I always thought we were pretty similar, that we kind of learned our X's and O's at a small college level. But
Uh-huh.
you spent a lot of time at the college
Yeah.
level. I did not
Well,
realize.
I tell you what, I was one of those guys that hung in there. Like when I went to Marietta, I wasn't a paid football GA. I was either a volunteer or I was a teaching GA 2 of the 3 years where I got paid. So I'd go in the morning and teach my class, go to football, and then go to night class. And that's how I had to do it to get it. And when I went to Marietta, I was a part-time guy. The first 4 years I was there, I ran a dorm,
Mhm.
so I always said, it's, God has a sense of humor, because all the dumb stuff you did will come back on you tenfold. And so all the dumb stuff I did as a college student, when I ran a dorm, I experienced that double of dealing with people.
Well, you know that you're bringing back so many memories, because I don't know if high school coaches realize that if you want to be a college assistant, if you can be poor for a while, in the dorm, the what are they called, RAs, the RA deal in the dorm, you're gonna be in a dorm, you're gonna be running a hallway at least, or a whole wing.
Yeah. But
And
you get to eat in the calf,
that
and
and
fortunately,
that meal ticket is a lifesaver. That meal ticket's a big deal when you're a GA.
yes. And I always, even as a GA, I always loved road trips. When I got to go on a road trip, that meant I was going to eat all weekends on somebody else's nickel.
That's all coming back. I'm remembering about our state days. Uh,
Uh,
and you mentioned the sprint program, and that's something Southerners don't really understand that.
no, they really don't.
And it's a pretty rich tradition up north, that the sprint
It
football.
goes way back. I don't remember how old it was, but when I was there were 6 or 7 schools. Let's see if I can remember all of this. Army, Navy, obviously, and getting to participate in Army, Navy contest of any kind was really special. And then there was Cornell, Penn, Princeton. Let's see who else. We played Coast Guard Academy's JVs. We played University of Albany's JVs. And we played in the stadium. We played Mikey Stadium. There wasn't that many people there, but it was still kind of cool that you're, playing Division I football, really,
Mhm.
and doing that. And my main job there, when I was there, those 3 years that I was there, was I was worked in admissions support. So my job was actually to go to the admissions committee and have the files ready to get football players admitted, because at that time, they would not offer a guy until he was admitted into the school. And if you and if and so we were scrambling sometimes when they go, okay, we're gonna bring this guy in on this visit this weekend, and we had to get him in school that week, and that was not always the easiest thing to do. And then I was in charge of every athlete at the academy coming in to make sure that they were cleared medically. And I always thought, as an outsider, that the hardest thing to get into an academy was to get an appointment. And that's not true for athletes. We made one phone call to a guy in DC and we had an appointment for him the next day. But medically, I was amazed at how many people got disqualified. Well, really, asthma, you wouldn't think that it's that big a deal. But if a kid got told as a little kid, oh, you got asthma here, I'm going to prescribe an inhaler for you, that was an automatic disqualification. And the only way they could overcome it is get on a treadmill and do a stress test. And some of the kids at that point went, nah, I ain't interested in doing that. So that was a unique experience. That was probably the best job I had and the worst place I lived.
Well, the only reason I know about sprint football is I hired a guy one time, and he was the sprint D coordinator, I think, at Navy. And he was all puffed up about it. And of course, I'm being a dumb Southerner. I've never heard of sprint football before. So he spent the next 2 years educating me on the history and how important sprint football was. So I became a fan
Of
because
a
of him.
guy, you probably are old enough, and some of the guys listening to this remember Chuck Prefer. Chuck Prefer was a long time NFL special teams guy.
Mhm.
Well, his son Mike Prefer is last I knew he was the interim head coach with the Browns when they won the playoff game in Pittsburgh. And I'm not sure where he is now. I don't know that he's still in Cleveland. But Mike actually was playing lightweight. We called it lightweight football then. He was one of the wide receivers for Navy in lightweight football. And then he ended up getting into coaching when he got out of the Navy and ended up in the NFL as a special teams coordinator.
Awesome. All right. Question number 2. What's your difference? So we're obviously we're talking about culture, team culture. I know it wasn't called culture when we started. What was it called when we started? It was called team morale. It was called
Yeah,
spirit.
yeah,
It was
yeah. All
those
those
kind
kind
of things. But now it's called culture. So what is your definition of culture as far as your teams?
Well, here's the thing. If you look it up in the dictionary, it says culture is listed as a noun. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as a verb. It's an action. Culture is an action. It's not words. It's what are people doing or what are they not doing? To me, that's what culture is. And here's how I identified it. It's the unity that the team plays with. That was something that was a huge emphasis for me. It's how hard they play. I think I learned that from a lot of places I've been and a lot of the people I was blessed to work under and coach with and coach for. But how hard they play and then how they support each other. If somebody messes up, hey man, let's go. You're better than that and all that kind of stuff. And then they do it the whole game, regardless of what the score is. They're going to play the last snap as hard as they play the first snap, whether they're winning or losing. You don't see them throwing tantrums on the sidelines. You don't see them throwing helmets and doing all that kind of stuff. And, I spent a lot of time really coaching that up. And then when we would play week to week and we're watching the other team, when you saw some examples of that were good, you'd point them out. When you saw some examples of that or where a team was breaking, you would see that. And many times I remember, kids would come off the field and we'd be sitting there and they're like, Coach, we got him. So what do you mean we got him? Oh, Coach, they're out there fussing and cussing each other. I said, we got him. We're going to be all right. And I didn't feel that on the sidelines calling the defenses, but those guys had that level of confidence because they thought they were a better team together. And, I spent 3 years at Eastern Kentucky and we were really, really, really good. And the team that won the national championship probably had the least natural talent of the 3 teams, but they were the tightest bunch of guys. They loved each other. They played their butts off for each other. And, I'll go back to 2008 and 9 at Harnett Central, and we played you guys in 8. I don't think we played you in 9, the year we both went to the state championship, but we had a kid, an outside linebacker, Jacob Hyde. His number, I think, was 24. He didn't have a lot of talent. He was a little dude. He was our Sam linebacker, but he played so hard. I'd tell people, I said, you know what? We're better because of him, and we're going to play in the state championship because everybody looks at him and go, I can't let him down. I can't not play hard because he is playing his butt off every snap. And, that's the kind of stuff that I really try to develop with my guys. And, the player to player, when you kind of got is when a player looks at another player and goes, hey man, we don't do that here. An older player takes a younger player under their wing and they teach them the way that things should be done and the way that you want it done. And really, to me, there's 4 C's, and that's competent, concise, being committed, and being consistent. And to elaborate on those a little bit, just to tell you what I'm thinking about, being competent, they have to believe in you. They have to believe in what you're doing and what you're talking about. Because if you don't have that, if you're just going out there and trying to wing it as a coach, this, it ain't gonna fly. It ain't gonna fly very long. So that you can't fake it. You've got to learn your stuff, and it's okay not to know. It's okay to have a question they ask you and you don't know the answer to. You say, hey, man, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. But don't fake it and give them some BS answer, because that ain't going to work, because they'll figure that out. So, you've got to study, you've got to prepare, you got to have answers or find answers. I always kidded Mark and y'all made a bunch of people money when you started running a one back and a spread and stuff. I couldn't play that 4-4 cover 3, and have all them dudes in the box anymore. And I had to go learn how to play football differently on the defensive end. So, if you don't have the answers, go find them. And, you got to communicate effectively with the kids too. But be who you are, be genuine. I mean, that's something I was told a long time ago. I got excited and I was a rah-rah guy kind of when I was younger. But I was never really a screamer, although when my voice got raised, I could stop practice, and people would look from the other end of the field about what the heck's coach mad about. Being concise, I mean, little things like our whole defensive thing at Terry Sanford could be summed up in 3 words: squeeze it, spill it, kill it. The D line squeezed it, the outside linebacker spilled it, and the DBs killed it. And I stole that from a guy named Pete DeWeese, who's down in Georgia. At the time, he was at Milton High School. I'm not sure exactly where he is now. Another thing that we did is we made our defensive end and our outside linebacker or overhang player, whoever that was, could be a safety. Usually it was an outside backer. But we made them yell CBR. Every day we do pursuit drill. If they didn't yell CBR, we'd go again. And so what CBR is, and I've heard other people now, a lot of people are saying BCR. Mm-hmm. Well, I did it CBR, and here's why I did that. The first thing you're going to see is cutback. The next thing you're going to see is bootleg. And the last thing you're going to see is reverse as a backside chase contain kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And so we made them yell that. And I, young guys were yelling it just so they didn't have to go again. But the old guys had figured out, okay, if I do that, one, it slows me down a little bit. And I'm getting my eyes. I mean, we spent a lot of time training their eyes. And where do your eyes got to be? I remember when I was a young coach, sometimes you guys come off and you give him old coaching clinic about everything that he did wrong, what to do, when you really just said, what were you looking at? And if he told you what he's looking at and what he did was based on what he thought he saw, then he did right by what you coached him. He just didn't have his eyes right. So that's a whole different conversation. But as a young guy, man, I'm out there and I'm on the board and I'm giving a dang coaching clinic, but I'm not helping them. But, be concise, offensively, on reach down, pass set. Our defensive line, that was our everyday drill, on reach down. I told him, I said, when you're 85 years old, you can't get out of a chair. You're still going to know how to do on reach down because we're going to do it every single day for 5 to 15 minutes, however long it takes, and teaching them how to react and do all of that stuff. The simpler you can make the game for them, the faster they're going to play. And obviously the faster you play, especially defensively, the better you are. And then there's little quick things like, I always thought John Wooden's 2 sets of threes that he got from his dad: don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. I thought that's a pretty neat little way. And that sums up a lot of stuff right there. Mm-hmm. The next thing would be commitment. And, I think the coaches set the tone. If you don't work hard, why should they as a coach? Everyone's got a role. I always told our kids, I said, not all are you going to get out there on Friday night and get to be the hero, but everybody has a role in our program. And some of it may be a scout team guy getting somebody ready to go. Some of it may be a guy that comes in different times and gives people a rest. And some of it is you're the dude. And I always told my guys that were the dudes, I said, man, it's good that you're the dude, but you got to understand this. I'm going to be harder on you than anybody else, because you have the ability and you've got to do it the right way. And I ain't going to give you a break because if I did, all the other guys are looking at you. It's like, man, coach yelling at him. I got to go because I'm going to get fired. He's just going to get yelled at. And so I think that's important. I think average teams that are committed or average players that are committed are almost always going to be more talented teams. I felt like we've won games through the years that we probably shouldn't have won just because we worked harder and we were a little better prepared. If you've got to work or save it to get it, you're going to fight harder to keep it. I always think that's important. And, look for somebody that does more than you ask them to do. And then the last thing is be consistent. And you got to have that for leadership. I always told Travis, I said, Travis, don't make rules that you're not going to enforce. Because he'd say, well, I want to do this. I said, no, you're not. You're not. So don't say that. Don't paint yourself into a corner. I mean, I think, sometimes as a young head coach, you think, okay, I need all these rules because I got to get them right. And really you don't. You only need a couple. Ours were, be on time, don't embarrass the program, and play your butt off. If you could do those 3 things, we were going to be okay. you know. And again, like I said, don't let the talented people slide. Make them work hard. If somebody's late, I always tried. I always tried to do this in the summer. I always tried to leave one of my best players. We were going somewhere on 7-on-7. Hey, the bus leaves at this time, and if they weren't on it, we were going to leave them. And they're like, I've heard kids whispering, "Man, Coach so and so, he gonna leave your butt. You better be on the bus." So things like that. That matters. That helps. So I know that's a long answer for a short question, but that's kind of to me, that's what culture is.
No, that was a great answer. And there's a lot of gems in there too. All right, question number 3. And this is kind of where the golden nuggets are. What are
Mm-hmm.
what are the 3 best things you do to build culture in your program? When you're looking back, there's a lot of years there. What were the 3 big ones that really made a difference?
Well, obviously, winning helps a lot. Winning teams like to be around each other. Losing teams like to not be around each other. But we tried a lot of different things through the years. I probably tried 108 different things. But my big thing is those guys wanting them to understand that they weren't just number 25, or they weren't just the quarterback. They were guys that I cared about. I cared about their future, and I cared about where they went. Being in the rural places where we were, and then being in really the inner city in Fayetteville, most of the time some kid needed a ride home, and we end up taking them home. Well, you can have some great conversations in a 5-10 minute drive to some kid's house. And if you're taking them home every day over a couple of years, which a lot of times that's how it ended up being, that kid, you could really mentor that kid and really get some good things one-on-one that way. But the first thing I think, I always tried to get them together outside of football. Like every year we would do a position. Everybody would take their kids out to eat or take them to their house to eat. Everybody did that. And I made that a tradition. I'd let them pick when they wanted to go, where they wanted to go. Usually we do it as a D line. We do it in the summer. Sometimes we do it during the school year. One thing that I've done, and I don't even remember where I started doing it. I think I started doing it at Western, but if a defensive kid scored a touchdown on defense in the game, not a special team like a block punt or something, but he got a pick six, scoop and score, whatever. I took them out to eat, and they got to pick where they wanted to go eat. It started out as a steak dinner, but none of them wanted to eat that fancy. Came a couple kids like, "Where do you want to go?" "Oh, I want to go cookout." "Really? Cookout?" Like, "Okay, that's where you want to go. I'll buy you dinner." So we go eat cookout. So we did that. We did game nights where you just get together and just, you're just maybe playing cornhole, or you're doing something just to have some togetherness. We tried to go to team camps. For me in Harnett County, I wanted to get those kids away from Harnett County so they could see a different environment. I remember we're going to App State to camp one year, and we're getting in the foothills over around Winston-Salem, and one of the kids was like, "Coach, what's that?" I said, "Well, that's the mountains, man. Getting ready to go up the mountains." He had never seen the mountains before. He lived in North Carolina his whole life, never seen a mountain. We had kids that never saw the ocean. Now, we didn't ever go to camp at the beach, but we had kids. You just kind of assume, especially in the middle part of the state, every other kid's been to the ocean. Not necessarily so. So we try to get them to environments, take them places where they could see, hey, there's life outside of what I know, where I grew up. Um, and we did a lock-in right before school, like right before we started mandatory practice. We had a lock-in, and we did some team building exercises and things like that, and just literally spent the night in the school, in the gym. They sleeping bags or blankets, and they just spread out all over the gym, and they spent the night in the school. We had moms come in and feed them about 7 o'clock, and we had different activities and things for them to do. And then we had a little bit of time where they play basketball and just goof around and have some fun and do that kind of stuff. So we just tried to do some things that weren't just football. Another thing that we did is we wanted to try to find ways to compete every single day, as an individual, but also as part of a team. We did a lot of, we drafted the teams like some people still do, where, okay, you're going to pick all these guys and everything counts. Are they late to class? Are they getting written up? Are their grades bad? And they get points for that. Are they doing, service things, are they doing things like that? So, normally you're going to pick the best athlete, but that's not necessarily what you need in that contest. And I'd let the seniors draft the teams, and they usually have a team of about 7 or 8 guys. I said, all right, and we do this in January or at the latest February. All right, these are your dudes, man. You're responsible for them. They're screwing up. I'm gonna come to you first and say, hey, dude, man, you guys screwing up. Fix it. And let them have some opportunities to build some leadership. But we also wanted to teach them how to be leaders. So we would always have a senior leadership thing that I would do twice a month. And I always would have a book theme. And we'd have the seniors, the first time we did it, we'd come to my house and I'd feed them, and we'd kind of set things up and like, hey, what do you want to be? How good do you want to be? And where do you want to go with this team? And, let them kind of set that agenda, and then we would work through a book and try to teach them leadership. So one of the things I did is we didn't have an elected captain of the team till after the last game. We had game captains, and every senior was going to be a game captain at least once during the season, but we didn't have an actual captain of the team until they voted on it at the end of the season. Because usually, at the beginning of the year, they're going to vote on who the best athlete is, or the guy they think's the best player. That's not necessarily the best leader. And, as a coach, you can appoint whoever you want as the leader, but that don't mean that's the leader. They're going to follow who they follow. And, your deal is to try to teach them who to follow so they're following the right guy. Because if they're following somebody that's leading them in the wrong way, they're just working against what you're trying to get done. That makes it difficult. So those are, long story short, we tried about everything we could. And, I wanted just try to them to make them understand, hey, we care about you. We want you to be successful in life, not just football. And, we were blessed to have a lot of good players through the years at all the schools I coached at. A whole bunch of them went on to college and played. And I've only really had one guy I coached, well, two guys that I actually coached in high school in 24 years that have made money playing football. Kid that named Marcus Pittman that played in the Arena League for about 9 years out in Arizona. And then Mark Gilbert, who's still playing for the Birmingham Stallions right now in the United Football League. Those are the only two guys I ever myself personally coached that had ever made money playing football. But we had a bunch of scholarship guys that graduated and now have lives that were way beyond what they thought they were going to have when they were freshmen and sophomores in high school.
Yep. Well, heck, nowadays, if you can get them to college, they might make some money.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a whole different deal too.
Yeah. No, that's a whole conversation. All right. So question number 4, the $1 million question. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you first got started?
That I would feel like I feel now when I didn't feel that way when I started. That really how fast the years go by, and Travis and I were talking, and I think we started this conversation before we started recording, but a guy named Travis Connor was the first guy to hire me here in North Carolina. And we had lunch the other day and we're talking about it. And we try to figure out what happened when, and we have to think about, okay, what year was it and what school was I coaching at when that happened? And that's how you figured out what year it was. And, the years go by so fast. And, I coached 41 years and it don't seem like it was 10. I have a joke that people used to tell me when I was a young guy, the days are long, but the years are fast. And that's so true. It's just like I was talking, it's funny, Brian Till, who I work for at Terry Sanford, Brian's parents live across the street from me here in Pinehurst, literally across the street. And he and I were talking about it about a month ago, and we were thinking about how long, and he'd been at Richmond for 7 years. And I didn't realize it'd been that long. And he didn't realize I'd been retired for 4 years. And it's just like, man, time's really flying, and it just does. So that'd be the first thing. I think enjoy the journey, not just the wins. I always felt like, and I've told several guys this, I said, the older you get, and you tell me if you feel this way, the older you get, the more the losses stay with you and the less the wins mean to you. When you're young, you get a win and you're all fired up and that was awesome. As you get older, it's like, okay, that one's done. Let's go on to the next one. You don't really give yourself a chance to celebrate it. So, celebrate the journey. It's just, there's so much. Like, I'll give you an example. When we won the national championship, when I was a GA at Eastern Kentucky, we're in Wichita Falls, Texas in 1982, December 19th. We beat the University of Delaware 17-14. And the game, everybody's running out on the field, hugging somebody. Well, I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a wife or anything like that. So I'm running around. I feel like Jim Valvano. There ain't anybody to hug. They all running around. And I'm sitting there, and I had this thought, and I've never, ever forgot this. And I was in my 4th year of coaching when this happened. Had never had a losing season as a coach at that point. And I'm thinking, this is pretty cool. We're undefeated. We're 13-0. We're the national champions. And then my next thought was, that's it? That's all it is? And it's not, everybody thinks until you win one of those that it's all this and that. And it really isn't. It's the journey. It's the things you go through to get it. I remember we played Western Kentucky, won 35-14, and played 101 snaps on defense. And we were in a 3-4 now is what they call it, but we called it a 5-2 back then. We had a defensive tackle who was a transfer from Temple and an inside linebacker that looked like Muhammad Ali. And those were the 2 defensive ends in that game because everybody else was hurt. And we found a way to win that game and win it decisively, but played so many snaps. The head coach called timeout one time because they scored on like the first play. He says, I'm just calling a timeout to give you guys a little rest because I know you're playing a lot of snaps. But things like that, you just, when you sit there and take time to reflect on that, too many times people don't do that until they're done. They don't appreciate the little things and the little victories while they're going. So I think that's a biggie. I think have a life outside the game, because at the end of the day, the only people who are going to be less are your family. I mean, they're the only people still going to be cheering for you. And if you've stayed away, I mean, you can always work another hour. You can always plan this. You can always plan that. And realistically, you feel like you're giving your team the chance and all that. I don't know that you are. I mean, it's not. We make a simple game really hard sometimes. And I think, spend time with your family, have your family involved, have your kids involved, all those kind of things. And here's another thing that I think about too a lot. And I used to reflect on this. If you're at a school that's been around for a long time and had some success, they got these trophies from 40, 50, 60, sometimes 70, 80 years ago. And a lot of times they end up in a closet. Like, you go looking for something in a closet one day and there's this trophy and it's like regional champions or something like that. Well, the people that won that trophy worked their tail off for that. And yet there it sits in some dusty closet and nobody knows. Nobody cares. It's like I say, okay, who won the 4A state championship in 2009? Probably nobody on your call can answer that except for maybe you. And I can, because we lost to Asheville Reynolds, AC Reynolds. Who was second? Is us at Harness Central. And who won the 1AA national championship in 1982? We did, Eastern Kentucky. But if you ask most people that, they don't know that. And nor do they care. Even if you said, hey, who won the Super Bowl 5 years ago? I mean, people have to think about it. I'd have to think about it. I don't know off the top of my head. I have to go back and think about it. I can guess New England probably have a chance, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So to me, when you go meet your maker and you're asked for an account of your life, how many games you won and lost is irrelevant. How many lives did you change and affect in a positive way? That's where it's priceless. And I get random phone calls every once in a while from guys that played for me 15, 20 years ago. And they don't ever say, Coach, man, I really appreciate you teaching me how to play 3 technique and take on the down block. And, they don't ever talk about that. Coach, you remember the time this happened and you said this, or we did this, or, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And we sit around, have a laugh and enjoy. And I'm sure you have the same thing. You've coached long enough to have guys come back and either see you or call you and say, Coach, I just appreciate you. Thank you. That to me is gold. That right there is worth everything.
I'm 100% with you. When they come back and talk, that's a big deal. And I tell you this, when you're talking about the enjoy the process, I was thinking there's been 2 monumental moments in my coaching career, and no one could guess what they are. And it was when we went and during summer practices, when we went from afternoons to mornings. It was life changing.
It really was. now that you
Remember, you would wait around all day waiting for practice to
I'm like,
happen.
I don't know about you, but I've enjoyed the heck out of this. They're like, yeah, that was fun.
Well, that switched to the mornings, and then we just and I we just made the switch to going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the summer. So everyone has a 4-day weekend.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely life changing. Like I never knew you could live a life in the summertime, and that and still get all your work done. Like we've got everything done we ever got done before. We're just more efficient and more, and everyone the kids love it, the coaches love it, the coaches' wives love it, the parents love it, everyone loves it, and those two things, those two little small things, were life changing. Because when I was 28 or 29, that I was football was everything, and it was all consuming, and a lot of life was happening around me, and my kids were growing up without me, and
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't realize what I was giving up, and those two little switches, haven't missed a beat, got all the work still getting done, but life is happening. So I'm on your back there.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up a memory as you were talking about that. I was standing on the Friday practice before we played the national championship game. Tubby Raymond, who won 300 games as a college head coach, pretty dang good football coach,
Mm-hmm.
inventor of the wing tee for the people that don't know that. He and Ted Kempsey and Davey Nelson, really. So
I'm not a wing T guy, and
they go practice, and I got all the scout cards and all that stuff, and he's sitting there and just shooting the stuff with our head coach Roy Kidd, who also won 300 games, and both those dudes are in the Hall of Fame.
right.
And he says to Roy, he says, Coach, he says, we're out here and we're spending our life and we're all tore up about whether we win or lose and all that stuff. They're just a bunch of kids out there running around playing a game. He said, don't ever for a moment think that it means more to them than it'll ever mean to you. And I've tried to keep that in perspective, and that through the years, that as wound up in it as we get, it still comes down to kids running around playing a game and having fun. And sometimes we lose perspective on that, although I remember Saturdays, and you talk about monumental changes. Here's one that I remember when I started out, and I'm a little older than you. We had 16 millimeter film. So when we got done playing on Saturday afternoon, we put it on a bus, and they drove it. When I was at Eastern Kentucky, somebody physically drove it to Lexington, and they got it developed, and then drove it back. My dog's barking, and we played Murray State on a Thursday night one night, and I draw the short straw, so I had to take the game film. So we finished the game, probably get about 11 o'clock. I roll the film up to Lexington. I got to wait for it to be developed. They make 2 copies, so it takes longer because Murray State spent the night in the hotel. So I had to drop by the hotel, drop it off for them, and then go back. I think I got about an hour's sleep till I got up the next morning because I started to go teach my class the next day. And, we started out 16 millimeter film my first probably 7, 8, 9 years. And then we went to videotaping. Man, that was awesome. And then you have the 12 DVD or VHS stacks. So you're trying to make multiple copies for everybody. And then you go to DVD, and you thought you were in high cotton when you had that thing. You put them 8 DVDs in and made it all in about half, a third of the time. And then, you do all the film exchange where you go physically meet somebody. I think, and I've said this, I think huddle has been a blessing for families. It's much more efficient, and you can even have pretty good planning without physically coming together and meeting on the weekends. And a lot of people are starting to do that. But I still think that younger coaches miss that opportunity to sit down and visit and really get to know a coach that you're getting ready to go play. I just think that, I mean, I don't know. I enjoyed the heck out of that on Saturday morning, going and meeting up with somebody and, hey, congratulations on your win, or, talking about, man, our team sucks.
Unfortunately, you can get to a game on Friday and not be sure who the other head coach is, because
Yeah, that probably is true.
that time of meeting and exchanging film on Saturdays, that was one I would change back to the way it used to be. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the coaches, I don't think the camaraderie, and I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's like what it was back in the day. I just don't. Um, And like you say about you don't even know who the head coach is. I had more than one time we playing somebody, especially a non-conference game. Somebody come walking up to me because I was the guy with white hair. They thought I was the head coach. Like, no, it's the guy over there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that is one of the advantages, by the way, for somebody that's been a head coach is no longer the head coach. If somebody's coming up to you with fire in their eyes and they want to complain about something, you just point to the head coach and go see that guy.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with that anymore. You say coach ball and I'm done.
With the years, you can spot them coming from a better distance too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Especially when you wear your glasses.
All right, number 5, and I'm going to read you the official question is, what is your contact info and do you have anything to promote? But I know you have a passion project, so let's
I
talk
do.
about that. Let's talk about
Okay.
the project.
Well, do you want me to give my contact stuff first? Or you do that last.
You can go ahead. We can go ahead and get that done.
Okay. Well, if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm on used to be Twitter, now it's X, at Bill Wyrick, WYRICK 2. My email is www.yrick713@gmail.com, and it's lowercase w. I do a little consulting, defensive football, option football, program organization. At one time, I was on 4 different schools' huddles. I told the guys at Terry Sanford when I retired, don't you dare take me off huddle. I'm still going to watch film. And most of the people that I do some consulting with are people that I've worked with and who kind of have a feel for me and I have a feel for them. But I mean, if somebody's got some stuff they want to talk about, you want to talk about the wing tee. I mean, I was taught the offense by a guy that played quarterback at Delaware. So, I know the Bible. I can, me and Joe McCollin are about the only ones that call it with the, that know the Bible, and Ben does now. But I know a little bit about that. But what you're saying, my passion project is Coaches Outreach. And for anybody interested in it, it's coachesoutreach.org. And they're out of Dallas, Texas. It's an organization that is founded by a guy named Tommy Maxwell. And I am going to hold up a book, which I don't know whether you'll be able to see or not, but this is his book.
Yeah,
Tommy is from Texas. He played at Texas A&M. He played about 8 or 10 years in the NFL. And when he got out of done playing, he went to the seminary in Dallas and became a pastor. And then he and these guys were sitting around and doing like kind of individual Bible studies. And, all his buddies were coaches. And so they said, this is a great thing. We need to kind of promote this. And so what we have is we have an organization, and we are in 23 states, about 750 studies. And we do a Bible study two a year, one in the fall, one in the spring. And it is a really neat thing. I probably benefited from that more than anything I did in 41 years of coaching. My faith grew, my patience grew. I was a better coach. I was a better husband. It just was a positive thing. And I'll give you an example. This is the book that we've just finished. We call these playbooks, and they're 12-week studies. There's 4 lessons per week. Everybody gets a book. They fill it out, and then they meet once a week with what we call a lay leader, and it's just somebody in the community that has a heart for the Lord and wants to serve. And you go through it. They facilitate the lesson and they go through it. This is completely free. It'll never cost you anything for the books. That's completely fundraised on the Dallas end of it. And I basically make enough money to cover my gas going out to schools and seeing people. We have 36, I think, studies in North and South Carolina, trying to grow it and get some more. If anybody's interested in that, please give me a contact. If I need to, I'll come sit down with you and spend as much time I want. If you're in North Carolina and you come to the clinic this summer, we'll have a booth up there. And generally, they put us right across from where the FCA booth is. And most of y'all know where the FCA booth is because it's the same place every year. So love to have anybody sit down with you and talk to you about that. Because, again, at the end of the day, your faith and your belief there is going to mean more than anything you do in terms of winning and losing games. And I just think it makes you a better coach and a better person. In addition to those things too, we do summer marriage retreats. They're getting ready to start those this weekend. They go San Antonio, Santa Fe, Nashville. They do 2 in San Antonio. There's one more somewhere in Arkansas. And they're all 4 or 5-star hotels. If you've never been to a marriage retreat, it's $100 a couple for the weekend. If you've been to one, it's 200. it's just a time of fellowship and some things that you do with your wife, and it's been a really popular thing. And if anybody's ever been to San Antonio, man, what a neat city. And I'm told Santa Fe. We've talked about going to Santa Fe. We've not been there yet, but we might yet do that when my wife and I. But that's just some things that they do. Um, it's something I believe in. I did it my last about 10 years as a coach, and when I retired, I was kind of praying for an opportunity to be involved in the ministry. And the guy that was doing my job retired and called me that July, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to retire. Do you want to do this?" I said, "Yes, I do." And that's what I've been doing since I retired. And that's an advice too for you guys that are getting near the end of the time. When you retire, have something to do. Have something that means something to you. Have something that gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, I don't have a lot of hobbies. I don't play golf well enough to enjoy it. I used to play tennis, but I haven't done that. We're thinking about getting into some pickleball, but you got to do something. I do woodworking, and I do coaches outreach, and I do a little bit of stuff with football on the side. So just have something to keep you busy. Have something that puts a little money in your pocket, so you got a little walk around change, that kind of stuff. So that's parting advice from an old fart.
Coach, you did a fantastic job, man.
Appreciate it.
There
I
were
had
there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of nuggets in there. I'll tell you
well,
that.
that's the less hair you got, hopefully the more wisdom you got.
I think you have to. I mean, there's no other way.
I mean, I always tell kids, I said, "Hey, man," I said, some of this baldness is yours. I want you to know that."
All right. I made all the way to the end. Uh, can you text me your your Twitter, your Gmail, and the website for your ministry?
Okay.
And if they wanna the consulting just contact you through Twitter or Gmail, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I have a card for coaches outreach, and I
Okay.
have a card, my consulting card. I'll
Mhm.
just take a picture of both of them, a screenshot of them, and send it to you.
Okay.
I'll
And
text
I'll put
it to you.
all that in the show notes so that they'll be able to get to you.
Okay,
And
that'd be great.
it might take me a while to get this thing uploaded.
Yeah,
I'd kind of forgotten I gotta remember how to do it as a podcast. I can get it on the YouTube, but I kind of forgot how to put it up as a podcast. So
yeah.
I gotta re-remember how to do that.
Well, I
So it
appreciate
might be a
the
week. It might be a
opportunity
week
to
or so.
do it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. It made me go back and look at some stuff. I got out some of my old stuff and looked at it and said, okay, what did I really, it's like, it's like that old thing about a coach gets up and he does a clinic and he comes back and his staff was there to listen to us. And man, that's some great stuff. Why don't we do that? So I tried to take stuff that we
My buddy
actually did.
told me he interviewed for a job one time, and the guy pulled out this big catalog and went through it all. He said it was masterful, organized. And then he said after the interview, he closed that thing up, put it away. They never talked about any of that stuff again. So,
Yeah.
so what you actually do is what's important.
Well, again, that's, what's culture? It's what you do. It ain't what you say.
Well, I'm rereading Randy Jackson's book, his second book, and his was culture is how your team talks, how your team thinks, and how your team acts. I thought
Okay.
that's pretty dang close to what it really is.
And it's just, we weren't very good for most of the time you saw me when I was at Western, but I tried to make sure they played hard. I mean, we were coached up, we played hard, and when we had a little bit of talent, we won a few games. And then
Yeah.
my last
Oh,
12
you're
years, I
always good.
see some places where we had some talent. So when we were coached up and had some talent, we had some fun.
Mm-hmm. I
You
like
know,
always good at Western Hornet. What your
well,
teams
you know
are
what?
always been the
Funny.
team that you better dang buckle up now. You better be ready.
Well, we're going to try to be physical. I mean, you missed. I mean, those teams in the late '90s, man. No, holy cow! I used to tell the kids, you know how good we were on the D line at Hunter Central. I said, dudes, you're number two, and they look at me like, what? I said, okay. I said, player of the year in the state, D1 signee at Auburn twice, uh, going to go to East Carolina as a signee, but broke his leg. And then that guy that could play anywhere in the country, probably D3 football. That was the 4 defensive linemen. And then,
I'm pretty sure I was at Clayton and we played you guys.
yes, those were wars.
Yeah.
If you were there during those 4 years when Travis was, those were some battles.
Yeah. And that's the
And
year.
the home team never won.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We were at Clayton my year, and you guys rolled in there, and I mean it was a war, and you guys came out with it. So yeah, no, I knew
Was
when the time
the
they went
was that
through his
when?
kind of time period, they went through they had some talent, like some
Oh
big
yeah,
talent then.
I'll tell you a little quick story about that. We're sitting there, and you remember a kid named Forrest Tucker? That was the kid that signed with Auburn twice. Wore a single digit. I think he was number 6. Big, tall kid, could run. Well, he was not very dependable, so I didn't start him a lot of times. Travis would play him on offense, but I didn't start him. Sometimes I didn't play him. And we're playing up there at Clayton, and it's a tight game, but we might be ahead or we're behind by a field goal. I don't know. It was pretty close at halftime. Said, and I don't remember this. A couple of the kids, Gaddy told me this. He said, "You remember that?" And I said, "No, I don't." I said, "But don't." I believe I said it, but he said that Forrest walked up to me and he said, "Coach, what about me?" And he said, "I looked at the scoreboard and pointed at the scoreboard and said, 'Looks like I don't need you,' and turned and walked away." And that was in one of those Clayton games at Clayton. I don't know which one it was, but it's one of them up there. But I had fun. I enjoyed competing against Gary, and he was the only coach I know that could go out to the hash and chest bump the official and not get kicked out of a game.
I got one. He came across the field to my sideline, hollered at an official, went back across the field, and the next play, that official threw a flag on me.
I don't have a doubt that happened.
And that was at my house. That we were at
Yeah.
our place.
He did something one year. This is after Mark and those guys had gone to Cleveland, and Patrick Turner's head coach, and he did something. And I looked at Patrick and said, "You and me, we just got kicked out and probably fined and suspended." And he said, "Nothing happened to him."
Yeah.
We ain't Gary Fowler. So, but I loved competing against him. He was a lot of fun. And Joe, I liked competing against Joe McCollin. He was fun. It was easy to get his goat. I made him play in the rain one night, and he had that little quarterback as quick as crap, had EB little hands, and he had about 3 turnovers. And Joe's walking up and down the field for the game going, "We shouldn't be playing tonight. We shouldn't be playing this game tonight." But it's my home game, and I know it's going to help us. So we played in the rain. So
I see Joe on Facebook. We're buddies on Facebook.
is he still going down to somewhere around Topsail and fishing? Is that was his kind of retirement last time I saw?
Yeah, he's fishing all the time.
He was his last time we were at Triple S. It's like it was homecoming, and I think I was still at Harnett Central, and he's out there with his daughter. She was one of the homecoming court. That's the last time I've seen him, and that's been, gosh, probably 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
If you see him, tell him that.
One of his daughters was out south for a little while, and she was on the homecoming court there too. So I don't know if it's the same daughter or not.
I don't. This would have been. I don't even know. It was after Mark and those guys are going to Cleveland. So 10, 11, 12, 13, one of those years. Well, 10, 11, 12, 13, I was down at Terry Sanford. So in any event, but I will take a snapshot of those two cards and text them to you here in a few minutes.
All right, man. You did a great
job.
I
appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you, buddy.
If you ever need to do it again, you call, I'll be there.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
All right, my man. Have a great night.